How do small businesses get funding? So the first one is that I want to speak to the traditional banks, right? So there are traditional banks out there. I think we know the traditional banks, the big 4 or 5, and how do they fund, right? How do they fund? So the first thing that we need to consider here is that number one, they will always look at the individuals behind the company. So in a company, you do have directors and you got shareholders and things like that, right? So the banks, when they are now funding you, because the business is small or they just started, so they may consider it. But let's look at option number one. Option number one, how do the banks, the traditional banks, look at it? So they will look into this company and say, hold on, this company is small. There are no assets in it. It just started. Maybe it's got more liabilities. And by the way, if you don't know what assets and liabilities is, jump onto Google. We'll talk about this a little bit. We'll dive into this. So on your balance sheet, there's nothing, right? So how do you now get funding? Well, the traditional banks, they will always look at the director of the business, right? Or the shareholders of the business. You may be one and the same person or the same persons, right? But sometimes if you are different individuals, the banks will look at all of you guys, right? Who are the shareholders, who are the directors in this business? And do they have a little bit of equity somewhere? Do they have money elsewhere? How wealthy are they? Or are they employed? Where are they employed? And each bank will have its own criteria. And then they'll be able to give you a yes or no on their funding. It's that simple. If you do have any questions around this in the comments, hit me up and I will answer them directly to you. Remember, this is all about you stepping up into your game, the one that you want to get into, to make sure that in your small business, you can be able to get funding. So that's the first one. That's the traditional route. Yeah. The second one is that, especially when we're talking about property investments, right? Especially when we are talking about property investments, there are banks out there that will not only look at the shareholders and the directors of the business, but they will also start looking at the deal itself. What is the deal? Can the deal carry the debt that you are asking for? The funding that you are asking for? Can that project carry that? So let's assume you're buying a property here, right? And you're buying this property for 5 million, but it's worth actually 10 million. And you are just employed, and there are banks out there that will look into such kind of a property opportunity and they'll say, yes, we can fund you because the deal is sweet, right? So they are not banks, but there are other financial service providers that can look into this as well. I hope this makes sense. My hope is that as and when I am talking here, you can be able to step up in your game. The third option is that you can do what is called a joint venture. Joint venture. What is a joint venture? A joint venture is you now have this opportunity that you've got as a small business, right? Remember, you're a small business and you're looking for funding. So can you joint venture with other people? Can you joint venture with the actual bank, right? Normally banks, the traditional banks, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't fund you off as a small bank. As a small bank, they wouldn't want to joint venture with you as a funder. But we have seen that the more that you have grown your portfolio, especially in real estate, the banks would also then want to joint venture with you because obviously you're borrowing lots of money. You're becoming too risky for them. But I've also seen banks that are smaller that can come in and also joint venture with you from the get-going, from the beginning, right? So they will do that, and with that, they take a stake in the project or in your business, and basically you now have a bank in your pocket. Yes. A lot of you are going to be asking the question, TJ, where do we find them? Where do we find them? Well, you are not knocking. As a small business owner, One of the things that you need, a skill that you need to acquire, is I've also learned, is you need to knock on many doors. You need to knock on many doors. The more you're going to knock, the more you're going to find. The more you're going to knock, the more other doors are going to open up for you. And if you're not doing that, then it becomes difficult to fund you. I don't know how many doors I've knocked into for me to get to where I am today, and I've not even stopped. I'm continuing to knock so that I can get the cheapest funding ever possible. If I don't even have to pay any interest on it, I think that would be my happier place. I look at other people who are on prime minus 1, minus 2, and I say to myself, how did they get there? But obviously, these are not small businesses like your business. I hope this information has been helpful to you. And if you do have any questions, I'm available in the chat. You can ask the question and I can just be able to engage you a little bit more. But over and above that, if you've never subscribed to our channel, now the time is to subscribe. And over and above that, if this information has been helpful to you, spread the love. Share it with those other people that are also in the same game with you in small businesses, so that together we can grow and we can all step up to the big game that we want to be. It is I, your boy, TJ.